Hello, good people of YouTube.
I am here once again for your entertainment.
And this time, I possess a microphone. So hopefully you can hear me a lot better and this is a lot less painful for me to edit. But today I have a presentation for you. It's a very important presentation about my life. It is called How High School Musical Changed My Life, a Butterfly Effect. So what is High School Musical, you might be asking? Well, it is a made-for-TV film directed by legend Kenny Ortega, who has probably directed all of your favorite childhood films, if I'm being quite honest. It aired on January 20th, 2006.
When I was 8 years old.
It stars Zac Efron, Vanessa Ann Hudgens, and most importantly, Ashley Tisdale. In a way, you could say that High School Musical was like a modern day take on Grease, I think you could say. And the general plot of it is that Troy, played by Zac Efron, and Gabriella, played by Vanessa Ann Hudgens, accidentally get callbacks for the school's musicale. And despite the fact that their respective cliques would never allow them to join the musicale. And, you know, I believe it changed lives forever when it aired that fateful day in 2006. Now let's take a detour.
Ashley Tisdale.
She was my everything when I was 8 years old. I already loved her from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I really loved Maddie. She was my favorite, specifically because me and my best friend would play, we would pretend to be puppies of London and Maddie, and I was the puppy of Maddie. And so I grew a large liking to her. I do think that I would have loved High School Musical with or without The Sweet Life, but I think it definitely helped. So I do want to acknowledge this. And really from High School Musical, my love was truly for Sharpay Evans. I think she was fantastic. I've been a Sharpay Evans truther since I was 8 years old. And this was very surprising to a lot of my friends and family because I was kind of known as, like, I guess you could say a real life Gabriella, because I really loved theater, but I was very shy and quiet. And so I think the fact that I was drawn to Sharpay really shocked the people around me. You know, especially my peers who largely thought I was mute up until middle school. And so the fact that I was drawn to Sharpay, it was kind of unexpected, I'm not gonna lie. But I loved her. I loved her so much that I had a collection of Sharpay dolls. They are still at my mom's house. If I was there and I could take pictures, I would, so I could show you, but I don't have pictures at the time. So instead, just enjoy the images on Google Image that I found of Sharpay dolls. I had all three of these, as well as many, many more. So that's a fun fact about me. No! There we go. So what did High School Musical do exactly? Why did it change my life? You might be wondering. Well, before High School Musical, I had always liked the idea of acting. But it was really for no other reason than the fact that I thought I was destined to become the star of my own Disney Channel show, you know. But I had always said that I wanted to be an actor. And so I was always drawn to the idea of doing theater and drama club, but I don't really think I understood like what was a part of theater. And like it was a lot different from, you know, acting in a Disney Channel show. But what High School Musical did is that I would say it truly drew me towards just theater in general, because from that point on, my mom could convince me to watch just about any musical that there was. by simply just saying that it was a musical, just like High School Musical. And so then this turned my interest to just musicals in general, which brings us to our next point, Legally Blonde the musical. What is Legally Blonde the musical? It is a 2007 Broadway musical based on the classic 2001 movie Legally Blonde, starring Reese Witherspoon. In October of 2007, MTV aired a special broadcast of the stage production of Legally Blonde the musical.
I was 10 years old at the time.
The original Broadway production stars Laura Bell Bundy and Christian Boyle. It follows the movie's main plot fairly closely, where it has Elle Woods, played by Laura Bell who is played by Laura Bell Bundy, as she gets into Harvard Law School after being broken up by her boyfriend for being too ditzy. So what did Legally Blonde the musical do for me? Well, I watched it solely because it was a musical. And since I loved High School Musical so much, I would watch any musical again. In fact, I had never even watched the original movie that it's based off of, Legally Blonde. Legally Blonde the musical is the reason why I eventually watched Legally Blonde. And the second I watched it, I became obsessed with it. The soundtrack of Legally Blonde the musical went platinum in my house. It was my go-to shower track, and I would perform in the shower constantly to it. It really solidified my love for musicals, specifically stage productions, because I think up until that point, I really could only enjoy movie musicals, and this is what really showed me just how wonderful Broadway could be. Just as a detour, let me talk about the other musicals that I loved. I loved Grease, Hairspray, Little Shop of Horrors, Mamma Mia. Again, a lot of them were movie musicals because that's what was accessible to me. But I just grew such a deep love for musicals. But I think ultimately what it did was that it really got me into choir and drama and theater. And really that's where all my interests kind of laid in, was singing, dancing, performing, the performing arts. I wanted to be an actress / singer / model / dancer /
president.
I want to be famous.
Hey, I want to be famous.
So now this brings us into Glee. What is Glee, you might be asking? Well, Glee is a television series created by the one and only Ryan Murphy. He is slightly terrifying, but he is a legend. The first season aired September 9th, 2009, when I was 12 years old. However, I do want to acknowledge the first episode aired early on May 19th, 2009. And I did watch it live. And I proceeded to re-watch it at least 3 or 4 times before it officially aired in September. This was back in the time where Hulu was actually free with ads, and they would allow you to watch certain episodes for free. So that's how I would watch Glee. I was already pretty obsessed with it, and I would go on Wikipedia to learn about the next episodes that would be airing. I remember very vividly reading the descriptions to preggers and learning that Quinn was pregnant, and I was very worried because I was a huge Finchel fan, even from then.
You could say that I was really the first Gleek out there.
Glee is an ensemble cast including Leah Michele, Corey Monteith, Chris Colfer, Amber Riley, Matthew Morrison, Darren Criss, Jane Lynch, and many, many, many more. It's kind of a cursed cast, but we love them. So Glee is about a Spanish teacher, Will Schuester, played by Matthew Morrison, who forms a glee club at the school that he teaches to help the misfit teenagers form a family through songs. So what did Glee do? I think the real question is, what did Glee not do in my life? This was solidly my core obsession from the ages of 12 to 15. I think for 2 Halloweens in a row, I was Rachel Berry. And yes, if you can't tell, since Sharpay was already like my favorite, Rachel Berry was obviously my favorite. I owned all the DVDs and all of the CDs, at least up until season 2 while it was still good. And it was also my first real fandom that I would actually look up online. Me and that Glee wiki page, that was my best friend. Let's take a brief detour while we talk about the Glee project. This was a spin-off show of Glee where real people would compete a la Top Model Project Runway style to get a guest appearance on Glee. The first season aired June 12, 2011 on Oxygen. I was a month away from turning 14. And yes, it did have a second season. Thank God. I loved it. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think I was more obsessed with this show than I was Glee itself. It was kind of getting to the point where Glee was really like falling off the rails. And so I acknowledged that Glee wasn't that great of a show, but I wanted it to continue solely for the fact that I wanted the Glee project to continue, at least until I turned 18 and I could compete on the Glee project. This did end up inspiring me to write a Glee fan fiction where I took all the contestants from the first season and formed a new Glee club with just them. I would say this really formed a love for writing for myself. Another detour. Shifting views.
This is where we get political.
Though it kind of really comes in fruition on a different topic. So I grew up with a Republican mother, unfortunately. I wouldn't say I necessarily grew up like conservatively. Like in a way, I felt like I grew up very liberal, but we just called ourselves Republicans. And I feel that way about my mother herself. But my mom really like instilled this idea that like Republicans equal good and Democrats equal bad into me. And so I really felt like I couldn't even like a Democrat because that was considered evil in my household. And for the record, I didn't know anything about politics at this time. It was kind of the equivalent of like my mom telling me that we were Cardinal fans instead of Cub fans. Like that's what politics felt like to me. It was like, it was like whatever family you were born in, and that's what team you played on. And so at this point, at the ripe age of 12 years old, I wouldn't really say I had like a negative or a positive view of a lot of social issues. Like I was just very neutral because I didn't know about them and they didn't affect me at the time. And so I just didn't really think about them at all or felt like very strongly one way or the other. I remember the first time I learned about gay people, it was like, oh, that's kind of weird, just because I've never like had thought about it before. Very specifically on Glee, during season 2 on episode 3, an episode titled Grilled Cheeses.
It's an iconic episode.
There's a line that Kurt says about religious people that like really stuck with me, about how religious people like to say that people choose to be gay. And he points out how like ridiculous this is, because why would he choose to be ostracized and made fun of? And why would he choose to make his life different and more difficult? And this was like this really resonated with me at the age of 12 or 13, because I think this is what really kind of made sense that like, you know, people are just who they are. They don't choose to be one way or the other, and they can't help the way that they are. And so I would say this was like the one thing that just really made me pro LGBT rights and kind of helped shift me more towards the left despite where I grew up, you know. Which brings us on to our next point, Tumblr. What is Tumblr? For you youths that might not know, it's a social media platform. It was formed in 2007, but it really had its heyday, I would say, in like 2011 to 2014. Perhaps I'm biased because that's when I used Tumblr, but that was like its heyday. Its UI was focused more on blogging and reposting. It had typical features like, reply, repost, And it was very easy to post pictures, GIFs, videos, sounds, and discussion posts that you could share with your own followers and follow people who you liked the things that they posted. I would say though that it had a heavy learning curve, like trying to learn how it worked itself, because it was a bit difficult to use, I'm not gonna lie. But in its heyday, it really was the go-to website for any type of fandom culture. And specifically, it had a lot of SJWs, otherwise known as social justice warriors. And so it was known as a very liberal website. I joined Tumblr when I was 14 in 2012 because I really wanted to see more GIFs of Finn and Rachel from Glee. That was the reason why I joined. So what did Tumblr do? I would say it solidly turned me into a liberal. Like even before then, I was kind of leaning a lot more towards like socially liberal views, but I guess I didn't really know how to separate that from what my mom had told me that I always was, which was a Republican. And so I really remember specifically during the Obama-Romney election, which keep in mind was like a few months after I had joined Tumblr, it really kind of shifted my point of view. Because at that point, the only message I'd really received from other people was that Republican equals good and Democrat equals bad. And really what my mom would instill in me was that Democrats were just stupid and voted against their best interest financially. And so even though I agreed with a lot of the more liberal social views, I'm like, well, they just want their money taken away for the people that want to steal their money. But I didn't really know what that meant. And basically Tumblr was the thing that really showed me posts that actively went against this narrative. And I remember especially there were posts pointing out basically how Romney was a bigot towards like LGBT people specifically, and that really turned me off against him. And so I remember during the 2012 election, even though I didn't necessarily say that I was like a Democrat and I wanted Obama to win, I certainly didn't want Romney to win, you know? And so that was kind of the first time that I vocalized like to my mom or really anyone around me that instead of supporting the Republican Party, I would just say that I didn't like politics and I didn't like politicians, and I was just straight up neutral. And so part of that was because I didn't want to betray my mom. So I didn't want to fully say that I felt like I was becoming a Democrat, but I knew I didn't support a lot of the things that the Republican Party was saying. And I would say that within a year or two, I was pretty comfortable calling myself a liberal. So,
sorry, Mom.
I'm not sorry, actually. I support this view of mine pretty wholeheartedly, I'm not gonna lie. And so what did this do? Let's look at college, right? So basically this is just gonna be my vague way of talking about the college that I actually went to, but I don't want to dox myself because it's a pretty small college. So I'm just gonna say college. But basically when I was 17, a senior in high school, looking at colleges, I was pretty much between two different colleges. And they were both very small and less than an hour away from where I lived. One of the colleges that I was looking at was a liberal arts college that was very left-leaning and had a very prominent creative writing program, which if you remember from the Glee project, I was very into writing at the time. The other one was, quite frankly, the biggest incentive of going was that it was a very cheap college, especially for a private college. But its main legacy was that it had a very important Republican leader as a part of their alma mater. And I won't say who this is because that will give away the location, but that was its main claim to fame, was this Republican leader that was a Republican leader that I heavily disagree with. You could probably guess which one I wanted to go to versus the one that my mom wanted me to go to. And I ended up picking the liberal one. So what did this alma mater do for me? Well, it introduced me to all of my best friends and my future life partner. It got me out of my incredibly shy shell that I was in for 18 years of my life. And while I would say it was very expensive therapy that I am still paying for to this day, I do think it was the most effective therapy for me at the time, and I'll be quite frank, that is priceless to me. I know a lot of people regret the loans that they take out for college, but for me, I truly think if I had gone anywhere else, I would not be the person that I am today. And so I'm honestly, those loans mean nothing to me. I'm perfectly fine paying off those loans because I love the place that I went and I love the people that I met at my college. It really influenced my future major and my first career choice, which was education, which is something that I'm very passionate about, even if I'm not actively pursuing a career in education anymore. And I would say that my alma mater truly changed my life. I would pick it every single time, especially with the knowledge that I have. So in conclusion, what did I mean by all of this? Well, High School Musical influenced me to like musicals, such as Legally Blonde the musical, which influenced me to watch the show Glee, which influenced me to get a Tumblr, which influenced me to become a liberal, which influenced me to go to the college that I did, which truly made who I am. And that's how High School Musical changed my life. I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope you learned a lot about how little things can change your life. And I hope you learned how showing High School Musical to your 8-year-old will make them the person that they are today. So thank you, High School Musical. I'll never forget you. Bye!